folks. We are working on, the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce, working on a publication, a book called Harlem's Evolution. Harlem's Evolution will cover 125 years of history of Harlem and of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. Aurora Flores is an artist, an author, and an activist who lives in Barrio, East Harlem. Her podcast, 100 Years of Latin Music, can be found on YouTube and Anchor and other sources. Aurora, can you please tell us about your contributions to the book, Harlem's Evolution?
My contribution was the chapter on East Harlem and its iconic Latino artists who've influenced both jazz and R&B music worldwide. Many think that salsa, as it's known now, was born in Cuba or in Puerto Rico. It wasn't. It came, Latin music was first recorded in New York City, in el Barrio. And it was the internationally acclaimed composer, arranger, writer, Rafael Hernandez, famous for Cumbanchero, who is a tune that can be found on London's Big Ben. And he was recruited by James Reese Europe, who came out of San Juan Hill. And when he was putting together his Harlem Hellfighters 100 years ago, James Reese Europe knew to go to Puerto Rico because there were all these black musicians in the marching bands of every town. And once Puerto Rico was taken over and colonized by the US, those musicians saw the writing on the walls and they started coming to New York. And they came to New York with James Reese Europe. They came to New York and Rafael Hernandez opened the first Latin music record store on 114th Street and Madison Avenue in 1927. And in my research, I found from the Center of Puerto Rican Studies, from the newspapers, ads announcing Rafael Hernandez and his trio at the Apollo in 1929. So there has been Latin music in Harlem since 100 years ago. There's been, and Latin music, this was the center. And when all of this was developing and the music was getting bigger, by the 30s, by the 40s, when rumba was big and all of America, FDR had the good neighbor policy and all of America's doing the conga and they're doing the rumba and they're doing the mambo, and all this music was growing together because in America they took away the drum from enslaved Africans. But in the Caribbean, in Puerto Rico, in Cuba, in Dominican Republic, we had the drum. And the drum was part of our life. And the drum, when they call an army to battle, the drummers are there first. And this is part of our culture, our music. And you have people like Tito Puente that was born in Harlem Hospital. And we are celebrating 100 years of Tito Puente right now. And then you had another, back in that day, all right, he came here in the 1890s, 1880s, a little known historian named Arturo Alonso Schomburg. And he also lived in East Harlem. So we had all these people, and of course, we're celebrating Tito Puente, but we also had the famous Joe Cuba, who beep beep, and he opened for James Brown, and he lived and died in East Harlem. And this is one of the reasons why you had people like Benny King celebrating Spanish Harlem with a rose in Spanish Harlem. And then you had Sam Cooke talking about everybody doing the cha-cha-cha. And when Dizzy Gillespie brought Chano Pozo into his band in 1948, and Chano Pozo lived on 111th Street and Lenox Avenue, where he was killed, After that recording of Manteca, every black jazz band started adding a conga. So East Harlem is very important to Harlem, and those first artists that came in, it was artists, it was poets, it was activists. They were very much together with the black community, with Harlem. They protested with Harlem for black-owned businesses. Adam Clayton Powell and Vito Marcantonio on 110th Street, they were politicizing the communities. So when the second wave of Puerto Ricans came in, there were already Puerto Ricans that owned bodegas, because we were advocating for that, for black-owned businesses in Harlem, because the first Harlem race riots. Why was that? Because they beat up a black Puerto Rican so bad he almost died, and there the NAACP saw that, and that was how those riots started. So we were together as a community, and I'm very grateful that Ron Scott called me to be part of this after he saw my article on the legacies of San Juan Hill. And I think it's important because nowadays we're in a time where everyone wants to separate us. And we are stronger when we are together. And we don't speak just one language. We speak many languages, and the strongest language we have is the language of the drum.